tell me about your self-care journey in all of these layers that you have had happening in your life.
Well, I guess when I think back, I've always been one to, I guess what you would consider self-care, like getting a massage here and there and whatnot. But when I first started dealing with chronic fatigue syndrome, it kind of opened up my different options of things that I used to do and the new things that I started to do to really, really, take care of yourself as far as self-care, such as meditation, something I did occasionally. But once I figured out with chronic fatigue, that's something that I needed to do. I started realizing the real benefits of it as far as sleep and stress and just taking that time for yourself, more importantly.
Right.
Yeah. So that became very, very important in my journey of healing.
Absolutely. So tell people, I think a lot of people have heard of chronic fatigue syndrome, but not everybody understands how it manifests. So can you talk to me about that?
Yes. So in my particular story, I was working overseas as a civilian contractor for the government. And my contract in particular was a 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hour a day type of contract, meaning I had no days off. But in totality, I did it for 3 years, and we would have 3 to 4 months. Every 3 to 4 months, we would have what we would call R&R. So I would be able to take 1 or 2 weeks off at a time and just rest and recuperate. Okay. Which I would take time for myself. I would sleep. I would just, do whatever, wake up, if I went someplace sunny, go to the beach. I'd be able to, get a massage and just relax,
Yeah.
So the only difference was this was my last 6 months of my contract. And I decided, okay, well, I'm just going to work the whole time through and just, stack money. So when I go back to the States, I can just, take a deep breath and relax. Okay?
Sure.
So unfortunately, my schedule, I was working 12 to 14 hour days, and I was working nights. I had a horrible supervisor. Okay. So I was stressed out, and I didn't even realize how this was actually affecting me. I was so stressed out, not getting good rest. And as a result, doing that for the extended amount of time that I did, by the time I got home, about a month and a half into it, I started, showing symptoms that I'm going to tell you in a few minutes of what equates to chronic fatigue syndrome. So the technical definition for chronic fatigue syndrome would be anyone exhibiting, these signs and symptoms for 6 months, ongoing and longer. Okay. So that's fatigue, trying to rest at night, not getting, to go to sleep because you just can't fall asleep. If you do fall asleep, waking up in the middle of the night, usually 3 o'clock in the morning with hot flashes for women in particular.
Wow.
Then once you do get to sleep at night, waking up in the morning and just feeling completely exhausted, like you didn't even get any rest at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Of course, feeling the fatigue throughout the day. You can experience brain fog, okay? Just feeling like you can't quite get it together.
Can't put a thought together. But you got together when you don't get any sleep.
Yes. Right. So you probably don't know if you're coming or going, you just can't quite get your thoughts out, get things moving. Also, you could experience muscle pain, and also you can injure yourself just working out like I did. I injured myself. I think it was just stretching, kind of doing, I don't know, some type of workout. And I injured myself. It's like I pulled the tendon or whatever in my leg.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, wow, how does that happen?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
how does
I mean,
that
that's how fatigued your whole body was, though. I mean,
Yes,
getting
yes.
needed. Wow.
Yeah, it was horrible when I think about it, but it was kind of like a buildup. It was a
Sure.
buildup. Yeah. I remember I went to like a naturopath. I'm like, God, I feel like, I'm working out, but I'm not able to lose any weight. And then, if I did like a cardio, hit workout, high intensity, I'd be absolutely fatigued. So that was the wrong thing for me to do. I found out later. I was having issues with my gut and digestion, things of that nature. That was bothering me.
Yeah.
So it was just a whole range of things. I found out later just from eating a brownie, that sugar just completely wiped me out. I was completely drained. I had to take a nap right away for, 2 or 3 hours. So the sugar just completely drained you. Okay.
Wow.
And then of course, at that point when I was at home, I wasn't under the stress. It was the stress that, got me to the position that I was in at that time. So it was just, I guess, it was kind of like a revelation after a while. When I did go to the doctor, and that was my regular, like the hospital physician, I had a physical. And in that physical, they take your blood pressure. My blood pressure sitting down in the resting position was high. And at the time I was like, my blood pressure has never been high.
Right.
I've always been an active person. And this is just strange. And so the doctor right away wanted to put me on medication. I was like, no. I don't do medication. If there's something I need to change my diet, then that's what I'll do. So I'll try that out. So from that point, I went to an acupuncturist because I've always believed in alternative medicine. Okay?
Yeah.
Always.
And the power of the body to heal itself if it's got the right formulas going on.
And so even as a child, I always grew up looking, at natural remedies to cure this problem or that problem. I've always been fascinated with crystals and using those as well. And at the time, I had just joined Young Living essential oils. Yeah. So I was also into essential oils. So I've always been into natural and alternative ways to heal. And so that was in 2013, and I just got my certification, finished that as a holistic health coach. So I had no idea, where I was going to take that, what direction. And it just so happened, it just so happened that I decided I was going to go to a seminar, and just learn and take in as much information as possible. Yeah. And the seminar was on stress. And
oh my gosh. And the impact. I mean, you just were like, your whole life just unfolded right in front of you.
Yes. So this is my path, this is the path I was supposed to be on. Yeah. Little did I realize, when I went to that seminar, wow, this sounds like me, in the seminar. Wow, I guess I've been under a lot of stress. I didn't take it that way because sometimes we just realize in the middle of something, okay, well, we're just going to deal with this, the best way we can. And you don't realize how much that stress can actually impact your life and your health, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's why we're going to get to it in a minute. You've just laid out the emotional, mental, physical health connection beautifully. But I mean, I want to go next into the boundaries. There were no real boundaries in this work. There were, the 7 days, 12-hour days, and now, we'll throw you a bone and send you off for 1 to 2 weeks to try to catch up. But that just scratches the surface on what is even possible for you to heal and move. I mean, you just have enough time to sleep and kind of recalibrate. There's no time to process everything that you've been stuffing and storing within that. So what have you learned about boundaries for yourself since that time?
Oh, yeah. I definitely not working another night shift.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, no matter what.
Yeah.
Oh my word.
It just threw my whole circadian rhythm off.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Absolutely. And you hear about that about shift workers all the time. I mean, we've got our nurses and our doctors and people in mills and there's all kinds of night shifts going on, and they mess you up if you do it for an extended amount of time.
They do. They do. And then boundaries with people. Okay. There's what you will accept and what you won't accept. And you don't have to fight every battle. You know what I mean? And if you have people like that are argumentative in your life, then you know that you have to tell them, look, I'm not dealing with this, I'm not dealing with this type of behavior from you.
Yeah. I don't have the space for it. This is for me. I don't need, because the tricky thing is, when you're serving, or when you're in work or space, you can necessarily control the narratives of your bosses and the people that you report to, but you can outside of that. And I think it becomes very clear. I mean, it's very clear in your journey, the levels of toxicity that this created for you, which is where you landed, as we talk next about emotional, mental, physical health connection. This is it. All those years of stored up trauma from the hours work, the difficult bosses, the night shift, all the multisectional layers of your life that we mentioned earlier, being a woman, being a BIPOC woman. I mean, all these things factor in, and all these things you never had time to move through or process. And then you came out of this experience left with this. I don't even know where to begin I think that it's really important we highlight this, because we talk a lot about women's health. We talk a lot about veterans' health, but yet there still doesn't seem to be an understanding of, you've got these military and contractors having people work these unsustainable shifts in time. I mean, there's a disconnect here. And you all are when you're doing this, you're in the front lines. I mean, your jobs are to protect your country, protect the world, protect people. How is it that this is viewed as a sustainable way to do this? Because no one's at their best when you're working like this. I mean, I'm just like, so yeah, I'm just going to turn it over to you. And I've got so many questions flooding. I told you before we started this recording, I don't even know where to begin. I have so many questions on all the layers of your experience. Yeah.
So when you are working, I'll just go back to, being in the military. We take on the mindset that, okay, if there's an issue or problem, guess what? It's going to have to wait, because we've got to get this done. We've got to focus on the mission. So when you are in that mind frame, you kind of take that mind frame on with the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So feedback,
So you're not just compartmentalizing to that one area. It's like, oh, okay, well, this is what I'll do everywhere. Yeah.
Right. So in the midst of being in combat, you have bombs dropping everywhere, and you still have to continue on with the mission. You know what I mean? So you don't really get to address those issues. Oh my God, what if this happens? What if that happens? And so even after the military, my father had died in 2008. I don't know that I fully processed that. You know what I mean? Because life was still just going on. Life was just going on is normal.
Right.
So, yeah. And so that's the mindset you take on. And even as a contractor after that, dealing with this horrible supervisor and the shift and people and whatnot, it's almost like I had to put that aside and try to, do my job and whatnot. But that actually weighed quite heavily on me. And then, as I stated, working nights, where I guess normally I would just, be asleep because I'm so tired. Those things that were going on during my shift were weighing on my mind, And even when I look and think back to when I was able to take an R&R, I was so exhausted. So if I went somewhere where I could go sightseeing, I was so exhausted. All I wanted to do was relax and sleep,
right.
Let alone leave the hotel and go out on an adventure or whatever. That just wasn't what I wanted to do. So it's like you're constantly trying to play catch up,
Yeah. Yeah.
And you never catch up.
You don't. And then there's no space to deal with. You don't have any space within you because your body's so filled with all the trauma, all the emotions, all of those experiences. There's no space for anything else. And so talk to me about unpacking all of that and allowing your body to process and move through it to get what was that like? I mean, you talk about in 2013, you're at this conference and you're like, whoa, I'm going to be my own first patient. I will be practicing on me first before I move to anybody else because this has really hit home. How did you even start unpacking all of that?
Well, it's just that, through my research and whatnot, I had to research. And then for me to discover that I actually had chronic fatigue syndrome, like I had stated, I went to this seminar. Okay.
Yeah.
And it was on stress. And then along with the seminar came a physical. And the physical was given by an acupuncturist. And this particular acupuncturist, he had gone to school 4 years in the East in China and 4 years here in the West. Okay.
We had a perfect combination. Oh, wow. Okay.
He combined all of his experience and he was able to diagnose people. Now, I did have a couple sessions of acupuncture, some cupping, and then the needles. But I decided, I said, well, what is the plan and whatnot? And so he did state to me that you need to be out in nature, at least 45 minutes a day in the fresh air walking. And, of course, meditation, from what I researched. And then I also had my essential oils that also help. But on top of that, diet was also a very big thing. And it wasn't like, okay, let me go on a low fat diet. That wasn't the answer.
No.
But I would say you have to slow down. You have to slow down. Okay. And that may be the most difficult part. Some people have to keep working, but I was able to not because I had saved. And so I could take that time to plan out my morning, plan out what I was going to eat, plan to take my walk every morning in the fresh air, get the sunshine, that vitamin D that I needed. And, through that and meditation at night, maybe take a nice bath to kind of get ready for bed. You know what I mean? Just to kind of set the whole scene up.
Yeah.
And to take that time for myself that I needed so desperately to heal.
Yes.
Because that's the most important thing. You have to take the time and go through the motions of just slowing down and give your body what it needs.
Yeah, that slowing down pieces can be really hard for us because once you slow down, your body starts telling you all the things it's been waiting for you to process. And they're just showing up in these not so fun ways. The chronic fatigue syndrome, the high blood pressure. Tell me about what happened with the high blood pressure.
Yeah. So when I went to get that second physical with the acupuncturist and I explained all of my symptoms.
Yeah.
That's how he was able to, determine that I had chronic fatigue syndrome because the high blood pressure is also another symptom. He took my blood pressure sitting down, resting. It was high. And then he said, stand up. And he took my blood pressure and that's a working position and it was low. So it was completely flipped. It was flipped.
Well, your nervous system too was probably adjusting to your nervous system that felt out of sync for how it was existing. And so it was responding accordingly. So even though you were resting and sitting and giving, your body what it needed, your nervous system had been completely flip-flopped because you had been living, I would say, in fight or flight mode for such an extended amount of time. Your cortisol levels were probably just through the roof.
Yes.
And all of the adrenaline. And so you had to retrain your system to what was actually helping, which I don't think we understand that enough. I don't think we understand that our body decides what is safe for us, our nervous system, based on patterns and what it's used to, familiarity. And when you get locked into unhealthy patterns, you get stuck and you got to teach it and retrain it on what is actually serving you. Like, okay, time out, not in that space anymore. This fight or flight mode, this go, 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 this elevated running from the lion, going back to, how our bodies were built back millions of years ago. I'm not there anymore. So I need, so we need to, thanks for showing up for me. Thanks for keeping me safe. Mm-hmm. This is no longer serving me, but that takes a time and,
grounding.
Yes. Yeah. So talk about that piece of just like, that's so fascinating that you were standing up and that's like, oh my gosh, wow.
So the grounding, when you ground yourself. So being out in nature and walking, very important for grounding. Putting your feet in the grass at least 20 minutes a day for grounding. And that also helps with your circadian rhythm to get that back in order as well. But your nervous system definitely takes a hit. And that's the thing. The high cortisol levels is not even something that they would normally test at the doctor.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it affects so many things.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Losing weight, stress, and the exercise, the correct exercise to do. If you're doing cardio or high intensity, that's just going to raise your cortisol. And that's not going to put you in the right, space of what you need to be in to lower your stress if that's, the stage at which you're at. So it's very important. That was very important. I slept on a grounding pad or whatever, and that's a good thing for people to do.
Yeah. I've heard this are there blankets too?
Yeah.
Groundings,
There's sheets. People have sheets. They have pads that they can put under their desk, under their feet or whatever. But the best thing is to go outside in nature, put your feet in the grass, put your hands, hug a tree or whatnot. And basically you just want to get your body back into alignment of how it should be.
Yeah. How long did it take you to get there?
So I would say a little over a year.
Wow.
And that is mostly because just trying things out, to see how they work. And then a big thing is consistency. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you can't eat any processed foods. You have to stay away from sugar, things of that nature. And a lot of people are addicted to those things.
Oh, absolutely. I don't even know it. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Was there a lot of protein in your diet?
There's protein, there's vegetables. You want to do lean proteins, but you're not going to, it's not like I said before, like you're on a low fat diet. Okay?
Yeah.
You have to make healthy choices, whole foods. And then also, what I've incorporated into my group program and coaching is, food combining. Okay. So it's knowing when to eat, how often, and what foods to eat and pair together as well.
Okay. Wow. So a year to kind of figure all this out. So tell me about talk about the HIIT and the super cardio, because that just jacks everything up. So what is nourishing for you?
Yoga is nourishing. The walking is nourishing for you. Qigong, that's something else that I did as well. People do Tai Chi, things of that nature. Yoga comes into play for so many different reasons.
Right. Yeah. I'm a big believer in yoga. I wasn't for years. I was a cardio junkie.
Right.
And so yoga for me for many years is like, I'm not getting enough out. I'm not getting, and it really was just, I think, the dopamine hit that I was getting out of the cardio.
Yeah. That's true.
But for me, I've been on my own healing journey, very different from yours, but some factors in, the cortisol level from the anxiety, the blood pressure from the anxiety, having to switch how I'm working out and how I'm feeding my body because of all of those things, plus perimenopause and menopause. So just throw that in. So that becomes a whole other player too, but it's so interesting how your body. It's like these things aren't like a cookie cutter. You got to take the time to look at your own body and see what it needs for its situation and how it needs to be treated and processed. So thank you for sharing all of that. I think that is, so you come out of that year and at that point you're like, all right, I think I can help people, I would imagine. Was that how that kind of rolled out?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I don't know. I think eventually over time is when I got the epiphany. Wow, I really went through this. Let me write down and kind of organize my thoughts on how I started, what I went through, everything that I had to do to, heal. Because it's kind of like I eventually realized, oh, wow, I'm better. I can, I'm feeling different. Certain things aren't affecting me. And that's why, I created my program. I created an instructional planner. I created also a journal because I feel that it's very important. I can't pinpoint exactly when, like the date and so forth, when certain things started to feel differently. But I feel that it's important to track your sleep, track what you're eating, track how you're feeling when you wake up each morning, because that's the only way you're going to know when things do turn around, and then you can see also, okay, this is not working for me. This is making me feel worse. All right.
Yeah. The process of elimination piece.
Yeah. Just the consistency with tracking your symptoms and everything that you do day to day is also going to help a person immensely with knowing, that they're actually healing. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for that. And this really goes nicely into how we can support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically. Talk to me about your journey with that. I feel like your work now really doesn't just do that for women, but for anybody that's going through this, other veterans, people in general that deal with this chronic fatigue that is a little bit of a mystery in Western medicine. And so more and more people are leaning towards this holistic and alternative way because it's the only place they're finding help and relief. But talk to me about that unapologetic journey for you and how you and supporting other women in that.
So it's very important to research, okay? And not to the point where you are, putting yourself in a situation where you're worrying about, this or that, but to know and understand your body and to be able to ask questions. Okay. And it's very important to understand that you are your own best advocate.
Yeah.
Okay? Don't let somebody try and tell you, you're experiencing this or you're not experiencing that. And understand that, an allopathic or Western medicine doctor is going to treat one symptom at a time.
Yeah, they're still not connecting symptoms.
Yeah. So they're unable to treat a person holistically. Okay.
Exactly.
The whole person.
Yeah.
And so with everything that I was experiencing, if I had gone back to that VA doctor, they would have been like, okay, like she did when I, was first there. Let me give you something for this blood pressure, And whenever you get any type of medicine, it's always going to have side effects.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's no telling if I took that, how it was going to affect anything else going on in my body. And I had so many different issues. Especially with my hormones,
Sure.
Early on, when I first I actually went to an acupuncturist before I went to that seminar. And so when I was describing those particular symptoms, that's what she was acting on. Okay. So it's kind of like you have to, have the full picture. But at the same time, if I went to the VA doctor, oh, well, this is happening, they can only do so much because they're kind of only primary care, you know what I mean? And so I would have had to go to this specialist and that specialist and, for so many different things. And it's almost like you're spinning your wheels, going down a rabbit hole and whatnot. And it's hard for them because they don't treat the whole person. It just so happened that I went to that seminar and then the acupuncturist, and he was actually the right person to put together all the pieces.
Sure.
But you just, when it comes to chronic fatigue, like I said, there's that 6-month time frame where you've been experiencing all these symptoms, you know what I mean? And so you have to be your own advocate. Okay. You just have to be. You have to believe that, there is a way.
No one knows the body more than you do. I mean, I think it's so interesting the amount of gaslighting that happens to
some people. They're not even believed, their doctors don't take them seriously.
They don't. And I think it's so interesting. You talk about going to the VA, and the VA, I think that's the VA is an interesting conundrum for me, because we understand now as a country, the impact of combat and being in these places and being in these kinds of schedules and regimens for our military. We don't have to, and still for you all to get the health care that you need, mental health, physical health, emotional health, the suicide rates, because of things that are undealt with, because of the stigmas
That's true.
that still exist. It feels like they should be on the front lines of taking a holistic approach, because it's very clear that all these things are having an impact on people, on veterans' physical health. Why do you think that's not happening? And I don't know, maybe you can't answer that question. I don't want to get you in trouble, but
no, not at all. It's absolutely true. I don't think they understand. Well, maybe they understand. They just don't want to pay for it. When you're in the military, you're getting this vaccine and that vaccine, and they don't know what the long-term effects are going to be.
Sure.
You're being placed in conditions that are not just harmful physically if, we're at war, but, your physical well-being,
Yes. And the trauma that has impact that has on your mental and emotional health.
Yeah. And so it's just not, it's just that they need people to go these places, according to whatever their agenda is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you are literally your government property. So whatever they tell you, you have to do that. People are there for all different reasons, for school, for travel, to learn a skill, whatever the case may be. But as a result, is what happens to your body, all the trauma, And so the way their system is, it's by condition, so if you never exhibit signs of this condition, then, you can't claim that your service is the result of that condition.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
So they would have to, pay dearly, I guess you could say.
And just recall the system.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's just a lot. They don't want to take responsibility for anything they don't have to. So.
Yeah. Wow. That's a complex conversation within itself. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I think the big takeaway here is, your body. Do not accept and message to other women and showing up unapologetically. Don't apologize for your symptoms. Don't apologize for your experiences. Be an advocate for yourself. And if you're not getting the help you need, then find a space and a place that you are going to get the help you need. And I think that's where your help really comes into play for people.
Mm-hmm, definitely. I don't know. It's just kind of like, just don't accept any doctor saying, okay, this is what you need. This is going to help you. And it ends up making you feel worse or causes other issues in the long term.
Yeah.
It's not as if medicine is the be all end all.
It's a practice. It is literally called the practice of medicine.
Mm-hmm. And you're experimenting. Yeah. You're being experimented on.
And there's a whole terrible history of that. I don't have to tell you. So very interesting. Do you have to still go back for checkups with the VA?
I do. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because I tell you, and I can't even, it's hard to say because you don't know from day to day, month to month, what's going to manifest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's the truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't know.
It's a mystery. It's like that experiment thing you were talking about earlier. What do they say about the progress that you have made with these holistic practices? Do they have any thoughts or comments about that?
No, because they're not trained. Okay, so any VA hospital is more than likely a training hospital. Okay.
Okay.
But
Okay.
so you're going to have like a doctor there for a certain period of time, and then you may have a new primary care doctor. So they're there to learn, but it's not. And they do offer, from what I've heard, acupuncture and like a chiropractor, depending on your specific condition. You know what I mean?
Okay.
However, whenever you go to the VA doctor, they're not there to help strengthen your claim per se. Maybe sometimes you might be able to get something, but usually you deal with your records. And if you're going to like file a claim for anything, it's best to go to an outside doctor.
Okay.
Outside of the VA.
Wow.
Okay, because the VA doctor is not there to help you. You're there to prescribe, whatever, and help you get through a situation. Yeah. But even chronic fatigue, I don't know, because I never addressed that with the VA. It was completely an outside doctor that discovered I had it. Had I gone to the VA, I probably would have been going back and forth, and I'm glad I didn't have to do that. That would.
No. Well, and I think the problem with that, and I'm hitting this hard because this is a problem in our country for so many veterans, for so many people. This is the healthcare they have access to. This is what they're relying on. And we have to do better by our veterans. We just have to.
We should. But if you look at the system overall, it's about them making money off the drugs they prescribe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. They've got
that's what it comes to.
With those. Yeah. And until it becomes actually about the wellness of the veteran.
Yes.
I
would say that for anybody, veteran, not a veteran, always look for an alternative solution to healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you could be on drug after drug after drug.
Yeah.
And
not knowing
Yeah.
And the other effects. Yes, because we just treat symptoms. We're not, Western medicine does not take a proactive approach. I mean, I switched to holistic medicine probably about 7 or 8 years ago because I just wasn't getting what I needed. Right. And there's a place, there's a place for, sometimes you need surgery. I think from a trauma standpoint, from a trauma approach, absolutely. There are times and places, but in terms of the day-to-day, that making connections piece, and talk about making connections, there's no more important group, important, but more like example of a group who's getting hit on multiple fronts with their health. When you have the experience as a veteran, what a better place to come with and ask all the questions about the impacts these things are having on your body, because so many times you're getting hit with all of them. It's a great learning ground for the impacts the body takes and the body's ability to heal itself when it has what it needs. So I feel like it's it's tragic because it's not getting veterans the help they need. And also it's a lost opportunity in terms of what's possible, medically, holistically. So thank you for that. We spent a lot of time on that, but I feel like it's important that people know and that we still have a lot of work to do in this space. I want to talk to you next about living out of your own expectations versus others' expectations. Talk to me about your journey with that.
Oh, yeah. So I guess when you're in that mind frame, you're dealing with chronic fatigue. Like I had mentioned before, you have to slow down. So if that means that you can't participate, and some people really cannot participate in regular activities because they just don't have the energy.
Yeah.
And so then you have to think to yourself, okay, well, you know what? It's time for me to focus on myself. That means that I have to disregard what others may think or say.
Yeah.
I know that, a lot of times people don't understand how you're feeling.
Yeah.
So then you have to make that, mental decision. Okay, well, I have to take this time for myself.
Yeah.
And it's not about what everybody thinks or everybody says.
Yeah.
It's not like you just have to decide, okay, I'm not trying to keep up with this person or that person. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
my own
you have to be strong mentally.
You value yourself enough to believe that you're worth doing that for too, which I think you've explained it really well. And that goes into, defining your why and your values in everything you do, knowing your own value, knowing what your values are. Your values are that I'm healthy, that I am well, that I'm at my best, most authentic self. So talk to me about how that's informed your ability to clarify and communicate those expectations, set healthy boundaries, all those things.
Yeah, well, you don't want to put yourself in a situation with anything or anybody that's going to put you in the mode of stress. You know what I mean?
Right. You had enough time with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's when you have to decide, okay, well, do I really want to deal with this person? Because I know that all they want to do is argue or, or compare this or that. And so you say, okay, well, you know what? I know that's not a healthy environment for me to be in. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to step away from that and do me. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because I'm the only one that's going to take care of myself the way I need to be taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah. And and taking responsibility for that too, about yourself, but also valuing so have you always been this confident in that stance, or is that something you've grown into over time?
Definitely, a little of both,
Okay.
Because I've never really cared what other people think or say, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because I know that, just from watching TV, people idolize all these movie stars and whatnot. Yeah. And I've not. I don't care.
Yeah.
Hey, either they're real people like us, or I realize, hey, that's their life. And then you have your life. You know what I mean? Yeah. They're not on the other side looking at you the same way, people look at them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then it's kind of like, okay, then you just kind of grow more and more into that. And, you start looking at life from that perspective, I would say.
Yeah. And experience and time has a lot to do with it too. So tell me, what was your why for choosing the Air Force as your route in the beginning?
Oh, first of all, my younger brother had gone in. I was like 23 and I was going to school, college at that point, at home. Like, I feel like I want to do something different. And I've always loved to travel. When I was 18, as soon as after high school, I had moved to California for a little less than a year and then came back home because I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to go out and see, what was out in the world and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I took some time to really, really think about it, about a year, because to me, I guess when people think about the Air Force or any armed forces, you got to wake up when they tell you, got to do what they say, and So for me, I was like, well, I don't like that. That wasn't me. But I don't need anybody to tell me when to do this or that or the other. Okay, I didn't like to get up early in the morning for my paper route, let alone wake up because they told me.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's always been me. So, but then I was like, but you know what? I can travel, and so that was the thing that made me want to go and get into the Air Force. And then at the same time, you're learning some type of skill, which is interesting because I also enjoy learning new things.
Okay.
So that's what sold me on it. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so how did you get to being in, you've got to have a pretty steely makeup to be chosen for combat, I would imagine. How did that?
Well, so it was my position, actually. Because I worked on the flight line in the Air Force. So I worked with cargo and passengers. Okay. And I worked in several different sections. I was in for 8.5 years. So I got to move around to different sections. I worked with planning what goes on the aircraft. Okay. I worked with loading the actual cargo and passengers off the aircraft. Mm-hmm. I worked with just passengers, and then the special cargo, like special handling, the different things like dry ice, different things that have different hazardous specifications for the cargo. Sure. I worked with the coordination of the different sections that worked within, you can call it Air Terminal Operations Center. So I worked all of those different sections. Wow. And I also just, when it was time to deploy overseas, those are the different sections that I may or may not have worked in because I had the experience.
Got it.
So,
Okay.
yeah. Mm-hmm. And so just to piggyback, with the airplanes, the airplanes are what carry the cargo and the passengers overseas. So that's how I came to work on the flight line whenever it was wartime and in combat and whatnot. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. I think it's really interesting going back to your why. That why of travel was so powerful that you were like, I can tolerate these other things because it's going to satisfy this why. And I think that's really a great example of the power of the why. When it's something that's really comes from within you, from your core, how it motivates the choices that we make and the things we do within that. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. I've said it multiple times. There are so many layers happening within your experience. So talk to me about your layers journey and accepting those layers and understanding and learning about them.
Yeah, I guess you just come to realize that those are parts of you and you just navigate your life around them. You realize what you will accept and what you won't accept. Okay?
Yeah.
What you're willing to do. The people that you're willing to be around and the people that you're not willing to be around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, your mental health is the most important thing. I remember recently, I did work for a healthcare company and then they decided that they were going to switch my position without really giving me an option or interview or anything like that.
Wow.
And then I decided that I was resigning.
Yeah, exactly. I have a choice too.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You have a choice and you have to be able to determine what is going to work for you and what is not. And even now and still, it's kind of like I can tolerate, working in a specific environment where I can work on my own. But to work like in an office environment with people and all the personalities, I totally shy away from that experience.
Yeah.
I've already had that experience.
You did. And I think that's important too, is you know yourself well enough. You understand what it is. But I'm going to get back to that importance of what you've hit on, of who we surround ourselves with, who we give our energy to, who we allow their energy to be poured into. I mean, if you're around someone, whether you want that energy or not, it's going to impact you. And thinking enough of yourself and your lived experience and how you want that to be, to define what those non-negotiables are about where you will and won't give your time. And going back to that fact that we have choice, and sometimes that can be tricky. We got to pay the bills, and we've got to be able to do things. But within that, how can you protect yourself? How can you protect your space and know that you're worthy of doing that? You've articulated that well.
I think a lot of the times in life we go along to get along.
Yeah.
And I understand that we have to pay the bills, but that does not mean that you can't find something or some things, depending on your situation, to do that. But at the same time, we have to take that time for ourselves to figure out, what fills you up. You know what I mean? Pour into yourself. What makes you happy? Your life is not just go to work and come home. You have to find some joy in your life.
Yes, you do. And that affects your health. I mean, that affects your health. It affects your well-being. And I think that's tell me if you agree with me on this or not. I think that's the power of travel. We have a very specific way of existing in the U.S. And it's so much of it is motivated by work, do. I've noticed when I've traveled internationally, there's so many other spaces that do not operate that way. They'll work enough, but they're more concerned about their quality of life. And they got no problem hanging a sign in the door saying they'll be back in 2 hours because they're going to go live their life. And it was so interesting watching how American tourists respond to that versus people that are from the areas like, that's just what we do here. And it's so like, that's possible? I mean, that's like, and so much more healthy. Like these different countries that operate that way, they have longer periods. Their lifespans are just longer, better quality. Like,
Yes.
that's the other thing too. It's like, I don't want to just live to 95 to live to 95. I want it to be a high quality existence where I can really live. And so making these choices you talk about playing such a big impact in that, and knowing your value and that you're worthy of that.
Yeah, I guess also we put such a huge emphasis on making money and all the taxes we have to pay. And it's like, oh, this is great. But you can also die from a heart attack because you work so much and you don't take that extra time for yourself to, rest and recuperate and whatnot. And, that's just not a way to live,
No.
It's just not. So,
No.
yeah, you can work and we have priorities and whatnot, but to continuously put yourself in a stressful situation, just from maybe your work environment or the people you're around, I think that you can do better for yourself. And until you try, make that effort, you don't know.
Don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, putting that time into yourself. And I would say too, for those women out there listening to this, if you're in those situations where you're working a couple of jobs, where are you finding space for yourself? Is it on your commute home? Whether it's music that nourishes you, whether it's quiet, are you giving yourself space when you get home? 15, 30, 45 minutes, an hour before you go into whatever the evening has for you, to take space for yourself. There's space if we see ourselves as worthy of it, but we've got to see ourselves as worthy of it, I think, to prioritize it. But look for those little spans in time. Maybe it's a 3-minute breathing exercise every hour to reset your nervous system. Pouring into you and the environments you are around for the things that you have choice in, find those spaces for you to nourish you. And I think that's just, we can't emphasize that enough, and the power of that. Thank you for so much for sharing your thoughts on that. Talk to me about, in Living Out Feel, finding empowerment, embracing layers, which you are a beautiful example of. Talk to me about the impact of that on your relationship with yourself, as well as your relationship with other people.
Yeah, well, I guess don't compare yourself to others, first of all.
Yes.
You're not here to be like everybody else. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been born, right?
Exactly.
You're here to be yourself and find your purpose.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing. People need to find their purpose. There's things people are passionate about. Is that your purpose? Or, is this just another thing? Are you good at this for a reason? Could there be, something in that you need to explore deeper?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, living in that alignment is so important too, because we'll feel the angst within us if we are not living in alignment. And I think it's trusting that and paying attention to that.
Your instinct. Instinct. How many people, hear that voice or get that feeling, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe I should do this, and actually act on it? Or do you just ignore it and go along with, going along to get along?
The status quo. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's where that living out of your own expectations piece, like, what do you want for your life? How do you want it to look? And what part can you play in manifesting that? Where do you have choices? And paying attention. We are trustworthy. And so many times as women, we are told from narratives from the time we're really little to things that we shouldn't trust, but we actually should be trusting, that we are, and that we have a voice, and we should trust our instincts and value that voice and value that inner knowing. It will guide you. It will not let you down. It knows you better than anyone else knows you. So thank you for sharing that. I think and when you show up that way yourself, that impacts your relationships and how you're able to show up for them. And you teach people how to treat you within that, I think. Would you say that's?
Yeah. I think, like before, I would meditate, but throughout the whole journey, meditating, you really become more in tune with yourself.
Yeah. Well, and taking time to be quiet with ourselves. We get really antsy, and I think just the culture and society we've grown up in about sitting in the quiet. We get very uncomfortable with that. We're very uncomfortable with space that's not scheduled, because there's so many stigmas around that. But also, the noise that comes up of things of our body and are trying to get our attention on what needs to be dealt with that we don't want to sit with long enough to process. But also we've been fed this narrative that we got to keep moving all the time. So the power of setting that precedent for yourself. And then
you will get answers. You will get answers to questions. Mm-hmm.
And it's hard.
I like to call them, I like to call them downloads. But if you sit long enough with yourself and meditate and then just go on with your day, as you go on in the shower, you will get answers. You will get ideas. Yeah. You will get so much from that. And that's what people don't realize. Yeah. Because you said they can't sit long enough. Yeah. I'm telling you, it will happen.
Yeah, it will.
Did for me.
And me too. It opens up space. When you give yourself time, it opens up space for that creativity to come through, for those ideas to come through. It gives you space to heal. It gives you space to let you know what your body needs that day. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a short-term thing or a longer-term thing, there's so many benefits. But again, it's just that and I was guilty of it myself. I mean,
we all have.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all have to have a path with that. I finally started getting, I don't know if I got comfortable with it, but I started doing it, 4 years ago. And I was like, whoa, it just layer after layer just kept unfolding itself in front of me, but also the space that it created. I was like, wow, that's amazing. I wasn't ready for that space piece. I was so focused on what was I going to unravel and what was going to make me uncomfortable that I didn't, get my head to the fact that this is going to heal things. This is going to reveal things, and it's going to open up space for new things and new ideas. So I think it is. It's a journey. I think that's the other thing too. We get to this arrival thing in our minds. It's not about arrival. It's about continuing on and peeling back, continuing to learn. You talked about learning earlier, being a learner and the power in that. So, and how that impacts the relationships and the people you surround yourself with. So thank you so much for all of that. So good. We are down to the rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Well, meditation, I would say yes. Just walking outside in the sunshine, in the forest, in nature. Oh, massages. Yeah, definitely massage. What else? Traveling. Just seeing different places. Learning new information.
Yeah.
Research, just what really nourishes me, spirituality, learning about metaphysics, I would say that definitely does.
Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. And going back to that travel piece again, and not everybody has that privilege to do that, but if you do, I think it's one of the most powerful informers of understanding others' humanity, understanding just that open mind to other people's stories, and there's more than one way to exist in the world. I think travel is one of the most powerful things I've been been fortunate enough to do. And what would you say that's been your experience as well?
Yeah, it's wonderful to see how other people live.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To understand that you're not the most important thing in the world. Yeah. How about that? Yeah. Well,
absolutely.
The United States.
Yeah. Exactly. And that not everyone is not thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are.
Right.
And that there's more than one way to do things. This
is a great country, whatever, for certain reasons, but not for every reason.
Exactly.
And some people just live better. They just live better. They don't have all the issues that we do here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's its own episode. We could come back and do a whole episode. But I wanted to touch on that travel piece because I know it's changed. I know it changes just the way you see the world, and the way you see people and the lived experience, and the fact that there's multiple ways to live well.
Yes.
And there's freedom. looks different for different people and how they experience that too. So yeah, anyway, that's a whole other rabbit hole that we could dive down, but we're not going to do that today. But thank you for your thoughts on that. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Healthy, strong, motivated, loved, positive.
Okay, thank you for that. Rachelle, tell people how they can work with you, how they can find you. And don't worry, audience, all this will be on embracinglayers.com on our resources page. You'll be able to access it there. But I want to give you enough time. Am I saying your name right? Is it Rachelle? I forgot to ask you that earlier.
Perfect.
Perfect.
That's perfect. Yeah.
So yeah, talk to us about how people can work with you, learn from you, follow you.
So yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Get Your Healthy Life is my group, but I'm really not on social media that much. Because
for you,
it's just kind of like it's ridiculous.
It really is.
It's crazy. People just I don't want to be addicted to anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do have a website as well, askahealth.coach. And so you can always contact me through that as well.
Okay. Yeah. Right. All right. Rachelle Davis, thank you so much for your time today. This has been such an informative conversation. We touched on so many things. I feel like we could pull out all these different pieces and create a bunch of different episodes. So maybe we'll do that someday. I know so much to cover, but thank you for your time. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your story. This is how we move needles on things. It's by having these conversations, removing these stigmas, exposing what's happening out there and what still needs to be done, what we can do better, how we can show up better for each other. I think there's so much power in that. So thank you for the part you play in that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, Fuel Podcast audience, there's a ton of stuff in here this week. Go back, re-listen, take notes, check out Rachelle's website and all that you can learn from her. And think about, so we touched on so many layers this week, but think about, are you caring for yourself well? Are you asking the right questions? Are you making space to process, to move through? Get outside. There is so much power in getting outside. Make that time, make that a priority. That you will be amazed at the impact that can have on your health of just getting outside. Think about how you're fueling your body, taking care of your body. Our bodies are pretty dang resilient. And if we know how to feed them, nourish them, treat them, they can do really amazing things. And our bodies are for us. And I think sometimes we treat our bodies as being against us. And I think Rachelle is displayed today with her wisdom that this is a powerful thing that can kind of switch the narrative on that. But thanks so much for being with us this week. Take care and have a great week.